Hey, what's up guys? Ophelia coming at you with another epic comic book review, and today we're taking a look at Radioactive Spider-Gwen, aka Spider-Gwen Volume 2, issues 1 through 34. Now for this video, we will be skipping over the Spider-Women and Sitting in a Tree crossover issues because I'll be covering those in separate videos later down the track, as they are kind of separate stories, which do have an impact on the overall of the Spider-Gwen book, but they're better discussed in their own videos. If you're not familiar with Spider-Gwen as a character, she first appeared in Edge of Spider-Verse number 2 as in the lead up to the epic Spider-Verse crossover event. She was introduced under the pretense of a character in Earth 65, where Gwen Stacy was bitten by a radioactive spider instead of Peter, and obviously talking about how that would change the universe as opposed to how Peter was bitten. One thing that's really cool about taking a look at all the Spider-Gwen books so far, with the exception of her current ongoing series, so her first appearance, her 5-issue series, dubbed Spider-Gwen Volume 1, and the full Radioactive Spider-Gwen, is how they all kept the same creative team, with the exception of, I think, one issue that featured a different artist. And that's something that you want. So it doesn't matter where you start reading this, it's always consistent. It feels like one consistent run. So the number changes are a little bit annoying, but it still feels like it's one book. And that's something that I really loved about this storyline. And they actually dropped the Radioactive from the title, I think about issue 10 or 11. They dropped the Radioactive from the title, kind of maybe to distinguish it from the original 5 issues, to not confuse people with the number of variants that are out there. The series picks up where the original 5 issues left off. Spider-Woman is still wanted by the New York Police Department under suspicion of murder of her friend Peter Parker. Now, they don't know that Spider-Woman and Peter Parker were friends, they just knew that Peter Parker was the Lizard, and Spider-Woman was there when the Lizard, aka Peter Parker, died. Now, we don't really see too much of this played out other than in flashbacks. We learn that Peter Parker basically developed the Lizard formula in an attempt to make himself special, because he learns that Gwen Stacy is Spider-Woman, and in this universe, he's still a wimp. He's never given the spider. He's never strong enough to do his own thing. And it's also like a cool way to work in Harry Osborn as well, because the Harry Osborn we see in this universe is quite different. Now, he does end up becoming the Green Goblin, and he does go after Spider-Woman, but he does it in a sense to avenge Peter Parker. So much of the stuff that happens on in the early pages of this storyline, of this book, is based on, you know, Gwen's guilt over the death of Peter and how that's affected many people around her, particularly Uncle Ben and Aunt May, who have a really interesting part to play. Like, they have absolutely no idea that Gwen is Spider-Woman, and when they find out later down the track, obviously some crazy things happen. I'm not going to spoil all of it for you guys. If you guys want to go read it, you'll discover as you go along. One thing that's also really cool about how they reintroduce new characters in new ways. Obviously, we're at Earth 65, right? So we have new incarnations of a lot of cool characters. Now, I've mentioned Harry, I've mentioned Gwen, and I want to also mention the Mary Jane and Felicia Hardy. So these two characters you might be familiar with, of course, Felicia Hardy being Black Cat, and Mary Jane, two of the most infamous Spider-Man girlfriends. Of course, Gwen Stacy's up there as well. But the rivalry that they play out in this series is related to music industry. So Gwen, as you may know, is in a band. She's in a band called the Mary Janes, which is fronted by MJ. And then Felicia Hardy used to be in the band, but now she's moved off to become a pop singer, and you have this level of rivalry and hatred between Mary Jane and Felicia Hardy in a new way, and it's a nice fresh take on that. You also have a introduction of characters like Frank Castle, Matt Murdock, who you may better know as Daredevil and the Punisher. We also have an incarnation of Kitty Pryde and Wolverine, which is pretty cool, and see how they work in, and they work for S.H.I.E.L.D., which is really cool. We also see a brand new Captain America and a brand new Reed Richards, and the Captain America in this is an African-American female, and that's a very nice new unique take on the character as well, and how she basically becomes sort of a mentor to Gwen, similar to how we've seen Iron Man become a mentor for Peter in like the MCU. It's a very similar sort of thing that goes on there, because the Captain America in this universe is a much older superhero, and Gwen is obviously a much newer superhero in her universe. As well as that, we also get to see, like I said, Matt Murdock and Frank Castle. Now, Frank Castle in this universe is the captain of the police department, and he's full on trying to hunt down Gwen, and a lot of the book actually involves Gwen trying to hide from Frank Castle. Now, Frank Castle actually does eventually learn of Gwen's identity, and some crazy stuff actually goes down. Now, really important character to talk about, and one of the best parts of this entire run, is the interaction and relationship formed between Matt Murdock and Gwen Stacy. Now, as we know in the mainstream universe, Matt Murdock and Peter Parker are actually really good friends. They actually are on a team, kind of like a meme team together. I think it's called the Red Trio or something with Deadpool. They get along really well. They show up in each other's books all the time. And this is, like I said, a great way of screwing around with that, because in this universe, Matt Murdock, spoiler alert, is actually the Kingpin. And due to the events of the Spider-Woman crossover, which I'll talk about in more detail when we get to that video, Spider-Woman Gwen actually loses her powers, and the only way to regain them is to use these patches. Now, Matt Murdock is able to give her these patches, but he says under the pretense that he works, that he becomes Spider-Woman for quote-unquote him. We see that this Matt is a lot more a lot more brutal and conniving and scheming. He's very much Wilson Fisk. A lot of similarities with that, but obviously is Matt Murdock. Very interesting. You see that he has more control over the hands. Like, the hand is like his puppets, as we've seen, if you saw the Netflix series, the hand wasn't really Kingpin's puppet. It was kind of like the other way around. In this, Matt has full control of the hand, and this Matt Murdock is great. He's the major villain of this series. It's so much like how Gwen is trying to take him down whilst being his puppet and trying to protect people, and that's something this book does really well. It talks about how it's the story of Gwen basically maturing from someone who's guilty about what happened to try and overcome everything to become her own person. Now, one thing also that's really awesome to talk about this particular series is their take on Venom. Now, in this universe, it's simply referred to as the Venom. Now, the Venom is actually something that's created by a scientist called Dr. Brock. Now, we don't find out too much about her, but obviously that's a nod to Eddie Brock, and I think that's pretty cool. We never find out her first name, but I assume it'd be something like Edwina or something, some play on Eddie. But basically, this is a new form that basically kind of helps her restore her powers. And the bond that Gwen actually forms with the Venom in this is actually quite unique and different to the bonds we've seen other hosts in the main universe bond with Venoms, and I think that's pretty cool. She basically ends up managing to full-on control it and uses it to amplify her powers. Obviously, she gets quite aggressive and violent towards the early parts of when she gets the symbiote, as you would expect, but eventually learns to control it and actually uses it to help take down Matt Murdock towards the end of the book. Overall, guys, this book is a very consistent run. There wasn't too many bad issues. I think the only issue I didn't like was the issues simply focused on the band. There's nothing wrong with that issue in terms of it gives decent character development to the side characters, but I'm reading this book for Gwen, so if I had to pick a bad issue, I'd definitely say that one. I do think the crossovers are quite strong. Both Sitting in a Tree and Radioactive Spider-Gwen Spider-Woman are great reads, and of course I'll cover them in more detail down the track, and they do have decent impact on her book as a whole. It's not like she just randomly showed up in a crossover and they never referenced it again. One thing that's really important that came out of the Spider-Woman crossover is the fact that Gwen lost her powers, and so much of her book is about getting her powers back. And then another thing that they talk about as well is in the Sitting in a Tree crossover, you get to see Gwen's children, and they do come into play a little bit later down the track as well. Overall, guys, Radioactive Spider-Gwen is a fantastic run that you guys definitely need to check out if you're a fan of Spider-Gwen, because unfortunately there's not too much Spider-Gwen content out there. She does show up in the new cartoon, Marvel Rising. I haven't had a chance to check it out, but I'm going to say she's definitely a reason why I want to check that TV show out. If you loved her in the Spider-Verse, you definitely got to check this out. The way they did her in Spider-Verse is so great, so accurate to the way she's depicted in the comics. Even the small glimpses we had of her Earth are a great representation of the style that we see in this book. And the art style in this book is quite unique. It's very different from what you'd see from a normal superhero book. It's, dare I say, radioactive in a way. I don't know, that's a bad cliche. But it definitely does fit the style of this book. And it can turn people off a little bit, particularly when you see her crossover with the other books. It's more noticeable in the crossovers with the Spider-Man, with the Miles stuff, as you can definitely see the two very, very distinct art styles. And I guess that's the problem you do face with crossovers. But as for, Edge of Spider-Verse 2 all the way through to Spider-Gwen, Radioactive Spider-Gwen number 34, it's consistent. They had kept, like I said, they kept the same creative team with the exception of, I think, one issue. And it really shows. You can see the love that these people had for this character. Like, these are the people who created this character, or not necessarily create this character, but laid down the groundwork for this character, and it shows. Overall, guys, Spider-Gwen is a fantastic character. I love her. If you love Batgirl, you'll definitely love Spider-Gwen. Definitely worth checking out, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys like this book as well, please feel free to let me know in the comments below what your favorite issue is, what your favorite storyline for this series was, what your favorite reimagined character is. Remember to like and subscribe to the video. Stay tuned for some more epic Spider-Gwen related content. Thank you guys again for watching, and I'll catch you for my next video.